Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today in our chat with two Fulbright alumni ambassadors. I'm Sabrina Cortez. I'm one of the study abroad advisors on campus, and I also work with my colleague Gina Pham. She's also in the Center for International Engagement as well as a program associate, and we are your Trinity Fulbright liaisons. So today we have, we're gonna have a brief presentation by our Fulbright alumni ambassadors. They're going to talk to you guys about what the Fulbright program is about, and then their own experiences within their program as well. So that's going to be the ETA and the research as well. So joining us today, we have Maren Lujan. She had her anthropology research in Sierra Leone, and also Valerie Simone, who was an ETA in Bosnia and Herzegovina. So without further ado, we would like to show you the PowerPoint presentation. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen. Okay, are you guys able to see this? Okay, perfect. All right, and so our Fulbright alumni, take it away.
Okay, so you can go ahead and go to the first slide. We're going to get through the slides pretty quickly because if you've watched any of the webinars, you've already heard all of this information. So today we're talking about the Fulbright program, which is really about fostering mutual understanding between nations, advancing knowledge across communities, and improve lives around the world. As a Fulbrighter, you act as an alumni, as a cultural ambassador. You're really taking everything that you are to another country and sharing that with the people there. So it was created in 1946 by the US Congress, Junior Senator Fulbright, sponsored by the US Department of State and Educational Cultural Affairs, and administered by IIE, and then administered overseas by binational commissions and US embassies everywhere. So I think we go into our introduction slides. So here I am. I was placed on the Islamic faculty of the University of Sarajevo, and I taught like what was considered probably a language lab, a verbal language lab for first and second year university students. I got to create my lesson plan, so I really focused on visual and active learning strategies. So a lot of getting up out of your seat, leaving the classroom as well. We went on like little field trips and used English in social interactions a lot. I hosted Taco Tuesday nights and photography classes as my community outreach. And my son went with me. He's the little guy in the photos. He was 5 when we arrived in Bosnia. And so I'm Valerie, and I did the English teaching assistantship 2017 to 2018. And now Maren will introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Maren, or Maren. I'm originally from West Texas, and I completed a Fulbright research grant in anthropology in Sierra Leone in West Africa from 2017 through 2018. So my background is in the social sciences, psychology, and anthropology. And as a part of the conclusion of my master's, I was able to complete some ethnographic research, basically going and living in a rural community in northern Sierra Leone. I was looking at the social and cultural factors that are impacting women's health in the area, in rural areas. And at the end of my research, I was able to work with a lot of the women that had been assisting me with my research, and we developed a play to showcase their experiences in managing the healthcare system. My research results were also presented to the Ministry of Health, and that sounds very fancy, but it's a very small country, to international development partners and to regional health coordinators in the area. Next slide. So part of Fulbright's commitment is their commitment to diversity and inclusion. So we want to make sure that Fulbright reflects what what the US looks like. And so Fulbright does look into they take a holistic approach in looking at who they accept, who they're considering for these grants. And so they're considering underrepresented audiences. They want to open up opportunities to all, regardless of race, color, national origin, sex, age, religion. You see all of those there. So it is a very holistic approach to diversity and inclusion. And so when it comes to that, we want to make sure that people don't feel constricted in their application. We want to make sure that they feel reflected in being able to apply, and you know, in particular for individuals with disabilities, you know, that there's opportunities to accommodate different abilities. So next slide.
Are you still able to see the next slide?
Yes, Valerie. We've been switching off on slides.
Wait, Valerie, I don't think we can hear you.
I can keep going. Yeah, we can't hear Valerie.
Hello.
Oh,
Oh.
now, yeah.
Okay, sorry. I couldn't hear anybody. I was like, oh, I don't have my headphones on. So student eligibility for the Fulbright program, it's open to graduating seniors, recent graduates, graduate students, early career professionals, including creative and performing artists and musicians. When you get on the website, you really want to look at the country that you're interested in, and then check what levels of degrees that they are open to applications from. Very many times you can find them at different levels: bachelor's, master's, and doctoral. And then also you don't even need a graduate degree, any degree, to apply for the Fulbright program. You can always apply on experience as well. So it's a very inclusive program. They like to say to us, you know, that it's elite, but not elitist. So it's very, very accessible for everyone. Basic eligibility is that you have to be a US citizen by the application deadline. Bachelor's degree or equivalent by start of grant. So equivalent is that word, that key word, where you can really bring in your life experience if you have a lot of that to put forward. No doctorate at the time of application. However, like I said, if you check the countries on the website that you're interested in, you will find some that do allow for that. And then country-specific requirements like language proficiency, whether or not they allow dependents, if that is part of your plan to take your family with you. So you can go to the next one. So there are two types of program awards that we'll be talking about today. There are more, but the two we're talking about today are study and research grants and the English teaching assistantship. So total over 2,200 awards per year with over 140 countries worldwide. And for the study and research grant, you can see the numbers here, 950 or more, and grant periods are the same for both programs, 8 to 10 months. And English teaching assistantships has about 75 countries, give or take, that they're available in, but there are more awards for the English teaching assistantship, over 1,200 there.
So when it comes to award benefits, you will receive different benefits before your grant, while you're in country, and then after your grant. So the actual dollar amount does vary based on the grant, the country that you're in, but for all students or individuals, you will all receive a round trip airfare to the country and back from the country, monthly stipend, which again will depend on the country that you're hosted in, accident and sickness benefits, and there are a couple of other possible benefits. So for me, I was conducting research, and so I did receive a research allowance. And so those different benefits will depend on your particular situation. After you've completed the Fulbright, you do have benefits from being a Fulbright alumni, and that includes, being a network of the alumni association, having non-competitive eligibility when you're applying for federal government positions, and you do have a lifetime Fulbright email address. And so there are perks to having completed a Fulbright as well, along with just the general name recognition. Something that, again, going back to what, depending on your situation, what benefits you'll receive, like Valerie received support for dependents, right? Because she was doing the Fulbright with her dependent. So it will depend on your particular situation. Next slide. There are several different components to an application, again, depending on what type of application what kind of Fulbright you're applying for. So it will be different between a research study grant versus English teaching assistantship. But everyone will complete a personal statement. So you'll have basically a page to talk about yourself, to talk about your accomplishments or who you are as a person. And a lot of this really helps the committee understand your goals, who you are, and how receiving a Fulbright might contribute to your professional development, right? And then other components of your application will include, if you're doing a research study, you have 2 pages to describe your research, which can be very limiting for a research grant. But so it will get down to, word choice a lot of the times. You have 2 pages to make a good case for your research project. For the English teaching assistantship, same, you have 1 page to discuss your plans for the teaching assistantship, why you've chosen to apply to that country, your experience, and what activities or ideas you're bringing to your teaching assistantship. For certain countries, you may need a foreign language evaluation, and you will need, as you see on the slide, 3 references. And then we do have, there might be campus committee evaluation requirements, and that will depend on your university. And yes, and so for an example, for the research study, the affiliation letter. So when you're completing a research project or study, you will need to be working with an institution or an organization in your host country. And so they will need to write a letter describing that affiliation and basically letting the Fulbright committee know what your plans are and that you're actually working with some organization or institution in that host country. I think we can go ahead. Yes.
Yeah, and the supplementary materials for the arts ones is like video of you if you're playing an instrument or if you dance, submitting files of like your artwork, different things like that when it comes to the art aspects. So factors in selection are quality and feasibility of the proposal. What this means is like how well you put forward what you plan to do and how achievable it is. So you really want this focused, refined approach to exactly what you're bringing to the country, what you plan to do there, and then also what you plan to do when you come back to the US is an important aspect as well. Your academic or professional record, personal qualifications, language preparation. Sometimes in the additional benefits, the country will have language classes included when you are in country. You can find that very much in the information on the website. The website is your life ring. I mean, it has so much information, has everything that you need to know about the country or program that you are considering. And then preferences, factors as established by Foreign Fulbright Scholarship Board, the extent to which the candidate and the project will help to advance the Fulbright program goals and requirements of the program in individual countries. So your application deadline, if you're watching now, you are way ahead of the game. Let me tell you, You have this entire time to really refine your application and get all of those components put together, especially if you're doing the study or research, finding that affiliation, getting all of that sorted out. So August and September is campus deadline. Sabrina or Gina, would you like to talk about your institutional deadlines?
Yeah, I'll just do it really fast now and then go more in detail in the Q&A. But the first deadline is June 1st, where a one-page preliminary proposal is due to our Fulbright program advisor, that's Dr. Jason Johnson in history at Trinity University. And that's just, like have an idea of what your proposal is going to be. It doesn't have to be polished yet, but we want to know like you've already started thinking. And then the campus deadline is September 20th. And that's when things should be submitted online already, so that Dr. Jason Johnson can review the application and start giving feedback.
Perfect. And then the national application deadline, there is no flexibility in this deadline. It is due no later than Tuesday, October 12th, 2021, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. No one can turn that in late. So you want to make sure that you have everything. A good rule of thumb is to have it all ready at least 1 or 2 weeks before the national deadline. You really should strive to do as much as that as you possibly can, because then you're just done. You submit it and then you wait for a while. All right, we can go to the next one. So this is where you can find all of the Fulbright program portals: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. There is a wealth of webinars on Fulbright, us.fulbrightonline.org. You can email, this email is amazing, fbstudent@iie.org. If you have any questions, you email that address, someone will respond to you and get you the information that you need. And we also have some independent affinity groups in the last slide, which we've listed for you. They are not affiliated with the Fulbright program, but I thought it would be useful for you to know about these communities that are established by alumni Fulbrighters to encourage diverse applicants and then also to build community for these groups specifically. So I founded Fulbright Families, because when I was looking to apply and take my family with me, it was really hard to find resources that spoke to that experience. So all of these other groups are really wonderful resources if you want to see people like you who have done the program and connect with others as well that can kind of speak more to your experience. So wonderful. Maren, did you want to add anything before we get into questions?
No, I was just going to recommend the previous slide. People can always take a screenshot if they want to keep that info. But no, we can hop into the Q&A.
Great, thank you so much for the presentation. I am going to pull up the questions that we have prepared. So I guess we can, you guys can popcorn back and forth, since we do have two panelists, but we have a couple of questions to ask you, and then we're going to open it up to our guests if they have any questions. But our first question is, how did you choose your specific program? So, did you have, were you between the ETA or the research? So how did you choose your program location, and what came to you first? Was it you knew you wanted to be in this program, or was it the location that you were interested in first?
So I applied, I didn't take all this wonderful advice that we're giving you about getting everything early and getting it done. I applied about a month before the national deadline. And so at that point, the odds of trying to find an affiliation, it just was not realistic. So I applied for the English teaching assistantship, and I really looked for countries that had similar cultural experiences that I had. So I grew up in El Paso on the border, and there's multiple language, multiple religions, this history of conflict, and also misrepresentation in media. And what I found that in Sarajevo, and not in Sarajevo, but in Bosnia and Herzegovina. You will never know what city you're going to be placed in when you apply as an English teaching assistant. So you have to be prepared to go anywhere in the country if you're awarded the grant. And then I also had to really find the grants that allowed dependents, because it wasn't for sure if my son was going to come with me until like a month before we actually went. But it was really important that if he was going to come, that I had to have that availability. What I found out later, though, was you can take your dependents with you anywhere. It's just a matter of navigating the visa systems within the host country. And there's ways that you can accommodate your needs and your family's needs, not necessarily within the program. So there's lots of possibilities. Also, what I found out later that I didn't know when I first applied was if you start out at the English teaching assistantship, you are eligible to apply for the research and study grant. You're not prioritized because you've already been awarded a Fulbright, but you can essentially go from English teaching assistantship to a research study grant, and then even into the scholar program. So you can kind of do it linearly in order.
Yeah, my experience was a bit different in the sense that I had already been doing international work, and so doing the Fulbright and selecting the country and selecting the project was a very obvious next step in the work that I had already been doing. And so the reason why I selected Sierra Leone is because I had worked in that country previously, but my first exposure to West Africa was in doing Peace Corps. And so I did Peace Corps at a time when they would just randomly select you for a country, so you didn't get much choice. Aside from I had studied French, and so they knew that I wanted to go to a French-speaking country. So it was kind of random, but nowadays people can select the country that they do Peace Corps in. So I would think that the selection, how you select a country might be a similar process. Also, because my background is in research, the research project that I was proposing, again, was an area that I had already been interested in, had already been working with several individuals on. My professors at my school were able to assist me in finding an affiliation. And so I was attending a School of International Service. And so obviously many professors there have, connections in different countries. And so I don't know what the situation is in Trinity, but if you're doing research or you're working with a professor closely and you have different interests in research and studies, I would talk to your professors, because they might have really great suggestions about, what country they might advise or where they have connections that might be able to help you. So I do think that for research and study students, the process is a little bit different.
Yes, and some have, so in doing Fulbright families, I've been able to interview, and then as an alumni, I've been able to talk to a lot of people who got the study research grant. So there's a multiple approach, right? Definitely network. That is such wonderful information to talk to professors within your institution to see who they know, if they know someone abroad, especially in the country that you are planning to apply to. And then also some have had to resort to just cold contact. And when you're cold contacting, you really want to understand the mode of communication within the country that you're going to, because it may be better to send an email, or it may be better to make those personal connections. But it's really just about continuing to try and putting out multiple communication with multiple institutions, because it does not have to be a higher education institution either. You can do any type of sponsorship.
Yes, the institution that I worked with was it's a nonprofit that does research.
Thank you. Maureen, can you speak a little bit as to like what your typical day your day in your life as a Fulbrighter was. So, you know, you can touch on what your housing looked like, how your community was, the work that you did, and how you spent your free time.
Yeah, so I selected a rural area in Sierra Leone, and what someone might expect out of like their, you know, what they might imagine, I guess, of rural West Africa. But I had a host family that I stayed with, and so I had like a little room off to the side, and it was a small, I would say like a small town of, if I had to guess how many people, I might say like 200 people in the town, but with a lot of, with a health center in the town, which served a lot of the surrounding rural villages. And so a lot of the work that I did was, you know, just going around town and trying to talk to people, because it was ethnographic research. And so a lot of, you know, hanging around the health center, interacting with women there. I visited a lot of the surrounding villages, so got to hold, you know, focus groups in a lot of the surrounding areas. And then some of my research was also what I would refer to as quote unquote studying up. And so looking at the health system overall. So I worked with international development workers. I interviewed some of the regional coordinators. I interviewed some of the nonprofit health organization leaders there too. So just trying to get a better sense of the health system overall, to understand how it operated at the local level. So talking to people day to day.
Yes,
Marin, how did you present that in your application, like your plan for how you were going to access all of those fundamental people to your research?
Yeah, I would say that a benefit of having worked in the area before and of having done Peace Corps before is that I already understand components of the culture and how I would access maybe certain things. And so in my application, and I apologize, it has been a while since I looked at it, but you know, really talking about like the ethnographic approach, that I would be interviewing individuals, kind of detailing who I might speak to learn about these different things, talking about the connections, you know, that I would be in a rural area, but I would also be conducting interviews in the regional district as well as the capital of the country, and make those connections with all different types of people throughout those different parts of the system, of the health system. And so really, I think in my application, linking it back to the experience that I already have. So being able to, you know, make the connection between my research proposal and my personal statement, right? That was, I think, a big component in me getting the Fulbright, is just there was a clear link between like my interests, my passions, my history, right, and the interest that I was putting into the research proposal.
Nice.
Valerie. And Valerie, for you, what did your typical day look like as a Fulbrighter?
So it was in the morning, I would walk to the tram with my son so that I could get him to kindergarten. And then I would come back to the faculty, and I had office hours, and then I had a few classes throughout the day where I was like leading those kind of verbal aspects. So the way that the lesson plan was structured was they would have some kind of written material, and we would go over that, and then we would talk about things. And then we would also do a lot of like hands-on visual activities, like having them draw. One of the best ones that we did was about cultural stereotypes. So I asked them to draw an American, I asked them to draw a Bosnian, I asked them to draw a person from Germany and a person from India. And then we really talked about like what that means, right? And the way that these people were depicted on. So this anthropology, my academic background is in anthropology as well. So like this kind of cultural relativism approach and different topics. And they always wanted to know what I eat, like what I ate for breakfast and lunch and dinner. And they wanted to know what it was like in the US. So we talked a lot about that. And then also it was really important to stress to them that everyone is uniquely different and has different experiences in the US depending on where they are from, what they go through as a child, what kind of resources they have access to. And it was really interesting. And then after school, I'd go pick up my son. We walked about an average of 4 miles a day. And then we had to go to the like bakery and the butcher and the produce market. Everything was very segmented. It was really wonderful. I enjoyed it. In Bosnia, they have a very big coffee culture. So if you have any type of social activity with someone, you go for coffee. And there are all these little places to sit and enjoy. It was really wonderful.
Valerie, a quick follow-up question on this topic for you. Did you have in mind those kinds of lesson plans for teaching English in time to put it in your application, or it came after you already got the grant?
I did put it in my proposal, very specifically those type of teaching, like different examples of activities and how they would impact. What I have to say is that my community research completely changed, like my community outreach completely changed from what was in my application and then what was realistic once I was in country, because I really wanted to do a lot more of photography, talking about photos, things like that. But it just wasn't possible. I couldn't get access to all of the equipment that I needed. And then also I tried to bring it into the classroom, but the students, they weren't into it as much as I thought they would be. So what I did was I just switched everything. I downloaded images from the internet, printed them out, and then we had these conversations. So it's like story building. You know, we'd have a woman in a photo, and then a student would tell a story about that photo. So you have to be flexible. You have to adjust. You have to prepare to completely change your entire project sometimes. That's the Fulbright experience.
Yes, I completely agree. I showed up in country right before national elections, and that threw off my entire timeline. But I was able to take that time to really focus on like the regional health interviews and such. So things will not go as you plan. And so I think being flexible and adapt and being able to adapt in that type of situation is key to a successful Fulbright. But I liked what Valerie was saying, you know, about her lessons plans directing related directly to her education, right? And so I think that's something that Fulbright likes to see, is just where's that connection? Where are you using previous experience and knowledge in your proposal?
Thank you. Maren, would you like to talk about how your program has helped you shape your career path? Or maybe, you know, it changed from before to now?
Yes. So I've always been interested in research. And it wasn't until after my bachelor's that I realized that I really love anthropological research. So my bachelor's is in psychology, and so I kind of assumed I'd be doing kind of lab studies or something. But I would say that Fulbright gave me that opportunity to engage in something that I was really interested in, that I had previously not really had the opportunity, because my master's is not in anthropology either. Both of my degrees have been like minor in anthropology or like a certificate in anthropology, but none of them have focused on anthropology. And so Fulbright was able to give me that opportunity to say, like, you know, I have the capacity to do this. I have, you know, had previous research experience. So, I mean, I loved doing that work. And I think in the future, well, currently I work in the public health department here in Texas. And so I'm able to use that experience in how I approach different health concerns, right, in my work. So I facilitate a strategic plan with community health partners from throughout the Austin Travis County area. So a lot of my work is still meeting with people, understanding, what their barriers are, working with them, getting people to collaborate, and also looking at what community health needs are. So definitely using all of those skills in my current profession. And I anticipate in the future actually going on to complete a medical anthropology degree. So it's definitely cemented, I guess, my passion for that type of research.
Nice. Me, so I had thought about, becoming a professor at some point after I graduated. And I decided that if I was ever to enter into the higher academic system, that I would do it as an administrator rather than a professor. My experience as a teacher, what I realized was that that was pretty much it, right? Like 9 to 5. I had no teaching experience before going to Bosnia. And so I was really able to see if it was something that I wanted to do. It was a wonderful experience, interacting with the students and kind of having that impact in their lives. But what I decided was that if I ever entered into academia professionally, that I would do it as an administrator. And also what I realized about my son, because he has ADHD, he's high energy, he's super intelligent. He doesn't fit the traditional lecture education system. And so what I would like to do is develop a program for children like him who have these more specific needs in the classroom. So that's something that I'm working on. I still have my photography business of 10 years. And I'm getting into retail. COVID really, that ability to adjust and be flexible was really something that carried from before my Fulbright into my Fulbright and then after my Fulbright, because we all had to kind of like adjust to the new ways that were required to communicate. Also like digital school. I thought I was better prepared to help my son in the home virtually because of the experience that I had in the classroom in Bosnia. So yeah, it's made a major change. It's made a major impact on me and then also on my son, because he got to see more of the world and understand that there's just more than our city and our home and our culture and our world, right? So he got to see a wider world perspective, which is amazing. He's like a little Fulbright advocate as well. He tells all of his friends, have you traveled? And if you haven't, your parents should apply for a Fulbright. So it completely changed academic goals as well. I'm actually going into psychology for my PhD. I went from anthropology. I'm going to switch it over to psychology because I want to look at transgenerational, like intergenerational trauma. What I realized about my anthropology research, which focused on identity construction and straddling cultural context, was that there was this whole other experience of that within the refugee communities. A lot of the professors at my faculty in Bosnia, they were able to escape Sarajevo during the siege in the 90s, and they lived in other countries, and then they returned to Sarajevo as adults. And so that straddling of cultural context not only happens when you live in like border areas where there's multiple cultures and languages and experiences, but also in that context of being a refugee and leaving. While we were there as well, everything was happening in Syria. So everyone was coming through the Baltic route. And my son and I were able to volunteer in refugee camps And that was a very impactful experience, which I would like to do more outreach like that as well. So many changes.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think a Fulbright experience students are going to learn so much. It's really going to expand their worldview, especially for people who have limited travel experiences, or even if they've traveled, but it's been for short amounts of times. I think when you spend such a lengthy amount of time somewhere, you learn a lot more about that country, about, you know, different cultures, different approaches and perspectives, and different, you know, lived experiences. So it's a great opportunity.
Thank you for sharing. So Gina does have a few questions to ask you as well that we had from other students who weren't able to make the session today.
Okay, so these are in no particular order, but while you're on your Fulbright assignment, do you do like check-ins with any sort of supervisor or something like that?
I had so Sierra Leone, it is not a commission country. So what that means is that the U.S. Embassy manages the Fulbright assistance, right? Because I was in a rural area, I did not have as much access to the embassy. And I'm not entirely sure, there might be a distinction. I'm not entirely sure if Sierra Leone has an embassy or a consulate. It might be an embassy, so my apologies for that. But I didn't have as much support, just given different circumstances in my research project. And but we did have like a mid grant report and a final report. But I would say that I know a couple of other people who completed a Fulbright in Sierra Leone, and one individual was in the capital. And so they had, you know, more support from the embassy, and you know, just all the connections that come with that, simply because of where they were in the country. So that level of support will vary depending on where you're located, if it's a commission country or if you're dependent on the US Embassy, and then what capacity is within, you know, the commission or the embassy.
Yeah, so I was also in a non-commissioned country, so we did most of our coordination through the embassy. It's pretty autonomous. Fulbright as an experience usually is pretty autonomous. You're independent. And if you're in a commission-based country, you do get a little more assistance when it comes to just navigating your daily experience, as far as like where you're going to live, transportation, just all of these kind of like streamlines. But I will say that each country is uniquely different, with or without a commission, with or without access to the embassy. Every single position is uniquely different. So you have to take that into account as well. For the English teaching assistantship, I think it is still the same. You work about 15 to 20 hours per week within your institution, wherever you are assigned. And beyond that, you usually, like for me, I had a professor who was the main portion of the English class. And then my verbal part of it was probably like 15% or 20% of the students' whole grade. So we would meet regularly. She approved my lesson plan. She really helped to mentor and guide me through the process, because I had no teaching experience prior. If you do have teaching experience, that's definitely a strength that you want to speak to and highlight in your personal statement and your proposal, for sure.
Okay, and then, oh, go ahead, Marian, go ahead.
I was just going to add that also, like the research institution or affiliate that you have can also provide support as well for individuals.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. You know, I do want to say, like, without my faculty, things would have been very different. So definitely network with the people within your institution. It's a plus to have that support.
Okay, good to know. Yeah, because Mara, my follow-up question for you was, how much contact did you have with the nonprofit affiliate once you were in country?
So I will mention that I had already worked with this nonprofit for my practicum, which I had done the previous summer. But I felt very supported by them. Again, I was in a more rural area, right? So unfortunately, there are still like network issues and like transportation issues out in more rural areas. So I wasn't, coming into the regional city that often, or even into the capital less often. But I felt supported by them. Again, I had a good working relationship with them. Previous experience with them as well. But I do think that in selecting an affiliate, that's something that you want to consider is, what is their capacity to provide me with support, not just for my research, but also just on a personal level. If you're, looking to, how do I navigate this new place? And so, yes, I have a great relationship with them for sure.
Okay, awesome. And then question for both of y'all, did you ever have free time to travel just for fun?
Definitely. I did, let's say 2 trips. So my mom actually came to visit me. So like I mentioned, I had worked and lived previously in West Africa, and so this was the first time that she was able to come. I was able to introduce her to to the town where I was staying. We were able to travel up to Guinea, which is my host country from Peace Corps. It's the country right above Sierra Leone. We were able to, we took a vacation essentially. So I was able to take that vacation, able to travel up to Morocco and Spain as well. And then at the end of my Fulbright, I was able to request to change my flight time. So not necessarily vacation time as much as it was postponing my return home so that I could travel a bit. And I did get to visit Ghana, which is also in West Africa. And then I had a friend in Benin, which is still in West Africa, but I got to travel to those countries as well.
So officially, you are only supposed to have up to 2 weeks out of country with the Fulbright program, and you're supposed to go through the proper channels to get that approved and to let like your embassy or your commission know that you will be traveling. Unofficially, you can move through the country and you can see different parts of the country, of your host country. And I did do 2 weeks out of Bosnia when my faculty broke for Ramadan. So we were there during Ramadan and it lasts for a month. So we did the first 2 weeks there. And then when we went out of country, we decided to go to Asia. So I took my son to the Philippines, to Hong Kong, and to Tokyo. We also went to Germany because you have to leave Bosnia and get to an international airport. So we were able to spend some time in Munich, and we also visited Croatia together. It was really amazing. I mean, he was only 6 years old and he had already been in 7 different countries. And it was a first for me too. I had never been anywhere besides Mexico. Briefly in Canada, like family trip to see Niagara Falls. But other than that, we saw a lot of things together for the first time.
That's amazing. Okay, then this is I guess 2-component question. Do you have any general tips for students applying? But then there's also a specific component to this question. Any tips specifically on who you reached out to provide your letters of recommendation?
Yes, I think in my experience, really the professors that I worked with were key. And I'm sorry, can you repeat the first component of the question?
Just general application tips.
Okay. Yes. So again, the professors that I worked with to get this application in were key to the success, not just the recommendation letter, but reviewing the proposal and reviewing my research proposal, right? So I know that U2 will be available to students And you'll have your campus committee member that will be reviewing it, but their research may not, or study may not, have anything to do with history. And so I think when you're drafting a proposal and you're thinking through, really work with individuals in that field that can give you specific feedback and information about how to go about your research, your study, your project, whatever it may be. And again, I think when you are building those connections with your professors or with whoever it may be, it may not be a professor, right? That's networking and that's professional development. And those skills are going to serve you really well when you're abroad. Going back to, to my experience and to what Valerie was saying, is that working with the faculty, working with the nonprofit, a big part of being successful abroad is just being able to put yourself out there and engage with others and learn from them. And so I do think that the skills that you're using to build up your application, to make it a good application, are also skills that will serve you in the long run. And so that relationship building really starts a lot earlier. So in my experience, those relationships have been really critical to a lot of the, my experience with Fulbright and on. And also, that feeds into the letter of recommendation. So I wouldn't be asking a professor that I only took one class with and I never engaged in the class, or I never followed up with them, asking them for a letter of recommendation, right? That person doesn't really know me. They don't know what I'm about. And so a lot of that work is, stuff you're doing now, stuff that you've been doing in your schooling.
Yes, I would agree with Marin that having professors that you have interacted with closely over an extended period of time is really a good resource to have as a recommendation, because they can speak to who you are as a student, who you are as a researcher. And you always want to provide an outline to whoever you're asking to recommend you. You always want to provide them an outline or exactly what your proposal says, so that they can have more knowledge of exactly what you are looking to achieve, and then they can speak to how you are qualified and what aspects of you will really help to move that project forward. Mine were 2 professors, and then I had a hard time finding my 3rd letter, so the Fulbright advisor actually did my 3rd letter for me.
And I would say the recommendation letters, I don't think they all have to be professional. So I think especially for students who are in their bachelor's, they may not have those connections with all the professors, right? But it should be someone that you've known, that you've cultivated a good relationship with, and that can really speak to attributes in your personality or character that will serve you in your Fulbright. I have this family that I used to babysit for, and I still connect with them all the time, and they still introduce me as their babysitter, even though their children are full grown. That kind of relationship where you have someone that can speak to a very long relationship into your character as a person is really helpful as well.
Okay, well, thank y'all so much. It's been super helpful to hear from 2 people who have made it from, start to finish through the process, and just hear you speak about your experiences. In the last couple of minutes, I'm just going to share really fast my screen so I can, any students watching the recording can access the timeline for the Trinity / the full Fulbright application process and the timeline. Let me make it even bigger. So obviously the application is open now, and then between now and October, when the deadline for applying is, we're gonna have a Fulbright writing circle, which Sabrina and I will be inviting juniors and seniors at Trinity to, because first years and sophomores, it's great if y'all are watching and already exploring this as an option for post graduation, but you can't apply until junior year. So, well, starting your junior year, start thinking about it. So we're gonna have writing circles, and this is a way to keep students accountable to, making sure you get through the essays, reaching out to faculty, getting those letters of recommendation, all the components that the application includes, making sure that you're meeting all the deadlines, because as you can see on the screen, there's multiple deadlines and we don't want y'all to miss any of them. So the writing circle will meet every 2 weeks, and that will be an easy way for you to, you have the standing meeting on your calendar, that you're gonna keep up and be disciplined with going through the application process. And June 1st is the first deadline at Trinity, where, like I mentioned earlier in the webinar, we have Dr. Jason Johnson just receive all the 1-pagers of preliminary student proposals. So you don't have to have everything fleshed out yet for your project, but we want to know, you're pretty serious about this enough that you've already written a proposal up, and then we'll continue to polish it up in the next few months. Then September 20th, you need to submit all your application materials online to the Fulbright application portal. And then that's when Dr. Jason Johnson in the history department gets to review it. And this is where Trinity does have a campus committee that will review the application and be able to give feedback. And then you do have a chance to have your application reopened now that you have faculty feedback, and then, make any edits or tweaks you want to your application to submit by the final National Fulbright deadline of October 12th. That's what it will be for this year. And on that date, we're hoping that the last writing circle meeting will be a sort of happy hour for us to celebrate that you made it through the application process. And then in the spring, hopefully we get to hear back anyone who got awarded, and then we get to celebrate that as well. So we want it to be this fun accountability group so that you are motivated to make it through the application process. So that's the Trinity process. But if you're already signed up for Trinity's, for the email list that Sabrina and I have been sending to students interested in Fulbright, you're getting all of these emails, making sure that you can get into this group and get signed up for more events like this webinar and other webinars. And if not, you can email either Sabrina or me at our Trinity emails, and then we'll get you on the list. Okay, well, that's it from us. Sabrina, did we have anything else that I may have forgotten to mention?
No, but I did want to say what Maren put in the chat is that she wanted students to know that if you don't get selected the first time, you should definitely try again. Or even if were selected as an alternate, because there's still hope. Both her and Valerie were originally alternates, and then they were selected to go. So, don't be discouraged if you, didn't get it the first time, or if you got to be an alternate.
Okay, well then, thank you so much, Maren and Valerie. It was great meeting y'all and getting to hear everything. And I personally learned a lot from y'all. So thank you for making the time for us and our students.
Sharon, sorry, I was going to mention that they can also go through the Fulbright Alumni Ambassador site and find individuals, and you can find mine and Valerie's emails there as well, but you can also find an alumni ambassador that is, did something similar to what you're interested in, and reach out to them. Feel free to reach out.
Yes, good point, because Serena and I were talking, and part of the writing circles we wanted to organize not only will bring in Trinity faculty to help guide the students with their proposals, but also we were going to give them homework as part of the writing circle to go look at the alumni ambassador page and find someone who's close to your proposal or something you're interested in, and reach out, because this has been probably the most useful, kind of like behind the scenes information we've gotten outside of the official webinars.
Yes, that's a great idea. That's such a wonderful resource. The website, I mean, if you're applying, you should know that website inside and out. There's everything you need to craft a successful application is there.
Perfect. Okay, well then that's the end for this webinar, but thank y'all so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.